while we're waiting on the radiator to be repaired, we're going to put the dash in and get all that secured up so that this steering wheel is not so loose. Okay, so the dash is in, and these bolts that hold the dash in also hold in the defroster vent, and in this side the steering column brace. So the only two I have left is this, and I have to get the other defrost vent bolted into there as well. This is the windshield washer actuator, and this cable in here goes back and forth. It reciprocates. I think there was a video on it earlier on when I reconditioned the motor and showed you how this thing worked. But that's how they do. I'll show you once I get power on this thing. We're getting there. We're getting closer. I gotta run the harness and yeah, hook up the steering column stuff. All this mess is for the dash and ignition and light switch and all that stuff. So that'll be coming next. Now, one thing we are going to do is we're going to make sure this fan works before we install it up under the dash. There's no need to go through that pain just to pull it right back out. And we're just going to use the battery in the car as our power source. All right, good. So we know that it works. But right now we're going to work on wiring up the overdrive unit and the actuation solenoid. So this is a circuit we're going to wire up. If you notice on the solenoid, and I'll show you here in a second, there are two coils in it. The holding coil, which pulls a little less than an amp, like 900 milliamps. And then you've got the pull-in coil. That's the one that does the heavy actuation. This one actuates it, this one keeps it. Because there's a switch right here that once it does its full travel up and the actuation, it cuts out. This thing pulls, I don't know, like 16 amps from what my meter was showing me, and I'll show you here in a second. But if the overdrive isn't rigged right, that switch doesn't get opened up, and you're pulling 16 amps for a little bit till finally that coil burns up. That solenoid burns up. So that's why they have a relay in the circuit, because of the heavy current initially. If you were just running off these switches, you'd weld the contacts of these switches, pulling 13 amps through them, or 16 amps, or whatever the thing pulls. I don't even know, because my meter's only rated for 10 amps, and it showed 16, but I don't know how accurate that is above 10 amps. So let me show you what we're talking about. All right, now this is gonna actuate pretty fast. You won't be able to see the heavy current reading, but you'll see the holding current. And it's 0.9697 amps, so 960, 950 milliamps. But if I take and pry this arm down so that cutout switch isn't actuated, look at that, 17, 18 amps. I don't want to do it for too long. So that's why we got rigging is very important on those solenoids. So if you noticed in that circuit, there were two other switches in parallel. That are these switches. And these are the switches that tell the overdrive. The overdrive will actuate in second and fourth gear. And I can pick which one. If I didn't want it to kick in second gear, if I wasn't cruising around town, because I think that's why it is made like that, is you can tool around in second gear or high second gear, and then obviously for highway, high fourth gear. So, but if I didn't want it to kick in second gear, I just didn't wire this switch in. I could just wire in the fourth gear switch. So you've got those two switches that make it automatic, and then you've got this switch on the dash. Let's see, we'll put some better light on it. It says overdrive. And you can always manually turn it off so that it doesn't kick in, even if it is in second or fourth gear. So let's get it all wired up. I still have to figure out where I want to put that control relay. If I want to put it down here close to where all the action is, or if I want to put it under the hood where the other relays are. Right now it's just the electric fan relay, which is under the fender cover, but this is the electric fan relay right here. Give you a better look at that. And I think you saw that in the previous video when I was wiring up all this stuff before our drive. So I have some decisions to make. I guess before I make all these grandiose plans of wiring up this system, I should make sure these switches work. Right now I believe I'm in the second gear switch. So let's see if I go to second gear. Alright, that one ohms out. Sweet! So I know it'll work in second gear. Let's see about fourth gear. Sweet. Alright, so both switches work. Excellent. Alright, so let me show you some of the other things we're doing while we're still waiting for the radiator. So I've put this UHMW cushion on the steering column clamp just so it doesn't dig into the steel and the paint on the steering column once I tighten this down and secure it. Because I did pay a lot of money to have this thing rebuilt, and they did a really nice job. So I want to preserve the paint job just because I don't want it to rust out, if nothing else. So we're doing that, and that's just adhesive back UHMW, which I got from where I get everything else, McMaster Car. I really only have two sources of stuff, McMaster Car or Moss Motors. And it's just a UHMW film, and UHMW just stands for ultra high molecular weight, but it's basically like contact paper. So I took two pieces of that, roughly the same size, stuck them adhesive side to adhesive side, so it made like a grommet, and then cut them so there wasn't any sticky parts sticking out from one side or the other, because it would make it very difficult to get that thing in. And then just slid it in around the column, and now I'm getting ready to run the clamp down. So here you can see my cushion, and I made it way bigger than it needed to be just because I can, but it'll keep it cushioned where there's contact on the steering column. So another thing we've done is we put the gauges in the center dash and just slowly doing the plumbing for that. This is the water temp line, and it has this giant coil in it, that's from the factory, just so it has gentle bends, and then it goes out to the engine. So I've got to secure that up. Also put the heater in, and its plumbing is all in. I'm not going to hook it up on the engine bay side right yet, just because I don't need heat. But if I do decide to hook the heat up, all this stuff is already in place. I just got to put in the air ducts to the vents here. I don't know if you can see it. There's one on each side. So I just got to put in the flex ducts, and then that'll be done. Tachometer cable. I'll put the tachometer in a minute. And the overdrive wiring's all done. Let me give you a demonstration of that. So as long as you have the overdrive switch in the on position, which is down, which is counterintuitive, but it's British, so from the same people that drive on the wrong side of the road. We go into first, and it doesn't engage. Go into second, and it does. Now in this case, I found this kind of strange, but you go into third, and it does, and you go into fourth, and it does. So, and of course, if you ever want to tool around in those gears without being in overdrive, then you can always just turn the switch off and it will disengage. So, but that's all done. So this car can really come off of jack stands, because everything, I think, for the time being, under the car is done. Look what we got back today. It's gonna be sweet. So stay tuned. Thanks for watching. Remember to like and subscribe.